Epic layoffs in Canada. Renowned Canadian economist David Rosenberg has stated that Canadian banks are experiencing unprecedented layoffs, indicating that the latest labor report data is not as optimistic as it may seem at first glance. In fact, banks have been responding to the economic slowdown by cutting expenses, including employee expenses. In the third quarter of this year, Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, announced that it had laid off approximately 900 employees and planned to further lay off 1,900 employees. Bank of Montreal, BMO, announced layoffs to address the slowdown in trading and investment banking activities. Layoffs account for approximately 4% of BMO's global capital market positions, or over 100 employees. In October, Scotiabank announced that it would lay off approximately 2,700 employees. On November 30th, TD Bank announced a 3% layoff. According to the total number of employees of the bank in the third quarter, the number of layoffs is approximately 3,100. In addition, smaller banks Desjardins Group and Canaccord Genuity Group Incorporated have also carried out layoffs. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, and Radio-Canada announced today, December 4th, that they will lay off 600 employees nationwide at the beginning of the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. Layoffs will affect union members, 85%, and non-union employees, 15%. The French department will cut at least 250 positions. Radio-Canada is facing a budget cut of 125 million Canadian dollars. Catherine Tate, CEO of CBC and Radio-Canada, revealed that the reasons for the cuts are inflation, fierce competition from digital giants, and a decline in revenue from traditional television. People called this news shocking, and many were uneasy about the news being released close to the holiday. In addition, music streaming giant Spotify announced today that in order to reduce costs, the company will lay off 1,500 employees, accounting for 17% of the total number of employees. Previously, the company laid off 600 employees in January and another 200 employees in June. A representative of Spotify refused to disclose how many employees in Canada have been affected by layoffs. The streaming media has an office in Toronto. According to incomplete statistics, apart from major banks, more than 20 well-known companies have laid off employees in Canada so far this year. 1. Absolute Software Corp. As part of its restructuring plan in April 2023, this Vancouver-based security software company has cut approximately 40 jobs to reduce operating expenses. 2. BCE Incorporated. This telecommunications giant announced 1,300 job cuts in mid-June, including 6% in its media department. The company attributes the layoffs to a challenging public policy and regulatory environment. 3. Beneficity. This Calgary-based company specializes in developing software related to charity. In January of this year, they announced plans to reduce team size by 14%, resulting in 137 employees losing their jobs. 4. Best Buy. This electronics retailer announced a 0.7% layoff in January of this year, with approximately 700 employees. 5. Canopy Growth Corp. This cannabis company based in Smiths Falls, Ontario laid off 800 employees in February, accounting for 35% of its total workforce, to help the company achieve profitability. 6. Cineplex Inc. This chain cinema announced 30 layoffs in February, citing that the box office recovery was not as good as they or the industry expected. 7. Clearco. Michelle Romanow's e-commerce investment company laid off 25% of its employees in January. The company previously laid off 125 out of 500 employees in July last year, and another 60 in August. 8. Clutch. This online car retailer reduced its team size from 231 to 81 in January, due to challenging microeconomic environments, according to Dan Park, the company's CEO. 9. Lightspeed Commerce Inc. This Montreal-based e-commerce software company laid off 300 employees in January, accounting for approximately 10% of its total workforce, with the majority coming from management. The company stated that this move aims to help unify multiple recently acquired companies and has planned to hire an additional 150 to 200 employees. 10. Google. This technology giant announced 12,000 layoffs in mid-January, and affected Canadian Google employees received termination notices in early February. 11. Hootsuite Incorporated. This social media company based in Vancouver has laid off 3 times in the past year, cutting 7% of its employees, approximately 70 people. Hudson's Bay. This chain department store announced in January that it will lay off 2% of its workforce, approximately 250 employees. These positions are mainly focused on the Bay and Hudson's Bay, the online and physical businesses of the retailer, aimed at helping them cope with significant external pressures. 13. Meta Platforms Incorporated. The company behind Facebook and Instagram announced in mid-March that it would lay off 10,000 employees and stop recruiting 5,000 positions as part of the company's efficiency year. In November 2022, the company had already laid off 13%, 11,000, of its employees. 14. Nordstar Capital LP. This publishing company is the parent company of Toronto Star and a series of other media organizations. They announced in September that their local chain newspaper Metroland Media Group will have 605 employees, 60% of its total employees, leaving. 15. Nordstrom. This Seattle-based department store chain announced in early March the closure of all stores in Canada, resulting in 2,500 employees losing their jobs. 16. Post Media Network Corp. Sources revealed in January that the newspaper publishing company will lay off 11% of its workforce. A few days later, the union claimed that the company had laid off over 75 jobs by outsourcing printing and page insertion work for the Windsor Star newspaper. 17. Ritual. This Toronto-based food delivery company laid off approximately 40% of its workforce in June, totaling 38 employees. 18. Rogers Communications Inc. This Toronto-based telecommunications company confirmed in July that a small portion of its employees have left involuntarily since the merger of Rogers and Shaw. 19. Rona Inc. This home decor retailer headquartered in Boucherville, Quebec, Canada announced in June that they will cut 500 jobs across Canada in order to simplify their organizational structure and adapt to the economic slowdown. 20. Shopify Incorporated. This Ottawa-based e-commerce software company laid off 20% of its workforce in early May, aiming to focus more on its main business. Shopify refused to disclose how many employees had left, but before cutting about 1,000 employees last summer, its total number of employees was about 10,000. 21. Suncor Energy Inc. This Calgary-based energy company announced in early June that they will lay off 1,500 employees by the end of the year to reduce costs and improve the company's lagging financial performance. 22. TELUS Corp. This Vancouver-based telecommunications company announced plans to lay off 6,000 employees in August, attributing this to the constantly changing regulatory, competitive, and macroeconomic environment. 23. Thinking Labs Incorporated. This Vancouver-based education company laid off 76 employees in January, and CEO Greg Smith stated that this is a necessary measure taken to achieve profitability. 24. Vertical Scope. This Toronto-based technology company is owned by the company that acquired Torstar Corporation. The company announced in February that it will lay off approximately 60 people, accounting for 22% of its total employees, to help the company cope with the current economic environment.